Um, Great. All right. Well, welcome. And once again, this is a series of webinars on building competencies for the middle market presented by ROI. We're giving it a couple of minutes as more people come in. Thank you again for attending today. We've got a very, very special guest, and Bernadette Boas, a consultant, best-selling author, as well as a radio host. And so you'll be hearing her radio voice in a minute, talking to us about the ROI impact of women leaders. It's going to be a very, very interesting session. We've had a chance to go through the presentation a couple of times, and it's going to be a really, really very insightful data and case studies about the impact of diversity in the workplace, the executive level as well as board. So I'll turn the camera over to Bernadette in a couple more minutes. We're just going to wait for a few people to sign in. We've got a number of folks coming in. Great. We've got messages that are coming in now. Welcome. Looks like we've got a couple more folks that have come in. Thank you for attending. We appreciate you being here. Again, if you wouldn't mind just putting a quick note in the chat box, letting us know that you have arrived, and obviously you've got the ability to hear us. So please go ahead and put hello in the chat box and let us know that you're there. So once again, my name is Brant Handley, Managing Director of ROI. We do retained executive search exclusively for the middle market, and our guest today is Bernadette Boas. Bernadette and I have known each other for about 4 or 5 years. Interestingly, in the world of digital communications, we've never actually physically met, but we talk on a regular basis. And I see the hellos coming in now. Great, thank you. And I've had a chance to work together on a couple of different projects. We've had the opportunity to introduce each other to each other's clients, and I've been incredibly impressed with the work that she's been able to do with regards to overall consulting and strategic consulting, but also how she is enabling women to perform in the workplace and elevating women at various levels in organizations large and small. She's got quite a storied biography, and as I was going through it, Bernadette, one of the quotes here I loved was, upon being handed a pink slip in 2008, she bluntly confronted her own bitch of a leadership style and persona and decided to author Shedding the Corporate Bitch, Shifting from Bitch to Rich in Life and Business. And we actually had that in one of our first emails, and it was interesting on how that got cut out to the email spams around the world. So unfortunately for those of you that read the successive emails, you weren't able to find out about that book, but it is a bestseller. You can click through to Bernadette's Ball of Fire Consulting website and find out about that. She grew up in corporate America. She spent 25 years there in a variety of mentoring, consulting, and leadership positions. These included things like Global Vice President of Professional Services Development. She was the Chief Knowledge Officer and also has been rated America's Best Business Consulting Partner. So she's got deep experience with regards to both corporate management as well as working in the consulting world. And I'm very, very pleased to have Bernadette here. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you, Bernadette. So if you want to grab the wheel,
right.
I'll get myself
I will do that. Let's see. Can you hear me?
I can, but I'm going mute.
Okay. All right. I wanted to make sure I got off mute properly. All right. Let me screen share. And does that look good, Brant?
That looks great. Thank you.
All right, perfect. All right, so I am very excited to be here and to share this information with you because I think there comes a time in all of our businesses as leaders, business owners, whatever the case might be, as CEOs, even board members, stakeholders, we run out of strategies, we run out of tactics. Maybe we have tried all the cost reductions we can or all the product expansions. Maybe we've hit a plateau. Of course, we always want to grow and move and swerve, but at the same time, maybe we just feel that there has to be other assets, other tools, other strategies that we have access to that we could be leveraging in order to continue growing our return on investment. And that is the angle that this conversation is going to be about. And there is one in all of our businesses. There is one in all of our teams. There is one within everyone that's sitting on this call. And so that's what I want to talk about is there this one asset that you're leaving you're leaving money on the table, you're leaving return on investment on the table, and it's been kind of packaged in a lot of other different things, in other different initiatives, and in other different business issues or challenges. Call it gender disparity or pay gap disparity. But at the same time, what I tend to look at when it comes to leveraging women in the workplace is more of giving you a business imperative that is right there, readily available to you, and that is leveraging the women in your organization and learning how to actually turn this whole thing kind of not upside down, but packaging it differently, that it is actually more talent diversity or talent management and development that is actually going to be able to leverage and expand and exploit your return on investment. And one of those talents happens to be, the women in your organization. And why this is so much of a passion for me is Brant kind of touched on it. I spent 25 years in corporate America at all different types of leadership roles. If you want to call it leadership, I'll get to that in a second. But at the same time, it really gave me a great perspective and viewpoint and an advantage, I believe now, 8 years after I've left corporate America, to really look at what it was that I could have been contributing to the organization and what other women who are very talented, very skilled, and yet maybe underutilized. And therefore, all of us as leaders, male, female, whether we're a CEO or just a line manager, it is our job. We're paid and compensated to be able to find these business strategies and these tools in order for us to continue growing and expanding our ROI, our brand, and then ultimately our business. And that's what I want to talk about today, leveraging, as Brant had mentioned, leveraging my organization development background, my background in talent development as a CEO and a leadership consultant and coach now for the last 8 years. I have been on all sides of it, and at the same time, I have been responsible to leading how businesses look at their pool of resources and optimize the talent that they have in the most effective manner in order to ensure that they are growing, expanding, and developing not only their business, but also the people within their business. And so we'll talk a lot about the facts. There's been a lot of studies. Again, they come in all different angles. They come at it in a woe is me, women aren't being treated fair or being paid right, or aren't being advanced or aren't being assigned the big projects, the big initiatives. And I won't turn a blind eye to it. I mean, I am a woman after all. At the same time, my experience is very different. My experience, and we'll talk about it, but my experience is the fact that if I were to provide you, both men and women leaders, tactics and strategies and tools for how you can be leveraging yourself as a woman and or leveraging the women in your organization, then let's hope that this conversation around disparity and discrimination goes away, and we don't have to have these conversations. As instead, what I'd like to replace it with is a conversation around how to leverage all the talent within our organizations, and one of those groups of talents is definitely being underutilized. So we'll talk about the facts. We'll talk about women. What is your role, and how can you optimize your return on investment within an organization? Strategies for you male leaders out there. Maybe you have attempted and are challenged with addressing this beast in the room, so to speak. But what are some things that you should know that are in the women's head, and at the same time take not advantage, but leverage properly in order to really also expand your role, your team, and your company? And then what are companies doing? And then what are some things and best practices that you could be doing? And then lastly, I have just all the resources that I refer to and that I mentioned throughout this presentation, I provided all of them on one slide at the very end of this. So don't worry that you would love to read these reports or you don't have access to them. I make sure that you are have them available to you. Now, I came across this statement from this Dr. Chang Chung of the Diversity Inc. group. And I came across it while I was reading and studying the top 50 companies that are known for their diversity programs. And I really have always had this philosophy and belief, and yet didn't articulate it very well in the past. And I would say, during my corporate years, and yet it does ring true today. So this statement is, given all human beings are equals, talents, not qualifications, should be distributed equally as well. Companies who are finding talent regardless of gender, regardless of race or ethnicity or a host of other dimensions of social differentiations will get ahead. Now, it does point out that it's regardless of gender, but when you look at that, how I viewed it and what I took away from it is almost like if you ever watched the show The Voice. Now, it's a show that I tend to enjoy to have in the background when I'm, at home doing work, or if I'm just kind of wandering around. But I find it to be a very unique approach to what is, kind of thrown out there in the marketplace, and that is how to find the best talent. Now, keep in mind, those judges on even a singing talent show, if you're not familiar with it, is a singing talent show. They're obviously leaders like yourselves, and they are looking for individuals, for talent that will help them make money. Now, that's what we're in the business to do, correct? So we're always wanting to think about what are those tools, strategies that will make us money, and therefore this show is no different than if they were in corporate America. Now, why I bring this up? I bring it up because the interesting and the unique, distinct value proposition that this show has compared to many others is the judges judge those talents with their back turned to them. So the individual might come up and might start singing and performing for them, and their backs are turned, and all they're hearing is their talent. They're hearing their skill. They're hearing their breadth and their expertise. And they are often surprised when that chair gets turned around that there is this very deep, husky voice coming out of a woman, or this high, squealy voice coming out of a man, or it's a very mature voice coming out of someone so young, and you get the picture. The point being is, just imagine what our hiring process might look like, and what our talent pool and what our makeup of our teams might look like if we never really saw the names of the individuals on resumes, or we never see the individual in front of us that we're interviewing, that we're only basing it on, the conversation we have with them, the skill set that they express, the potential that they have, because I know potential is one thing that all of you as leaders look at, even more so than what they've done in the past. But what potential does someone have is a key decision-making factor as well when it comes to hiring. So I just want you to kind of keep that talent show idea in mind, because it does provide you a really kind of a visual way of imagining really how can we leverage the source of return on investment that I'm going to discuss with you the statistics on, and how can we look at it with very clear, very unbiased, very impacted eyes, and make the judgments based on the fact that we want to make our teams, make ourselves, and make our company as profitable and as valuable as possible. And that is considering talent for talent's sake. So I just thought that was a good way to segue into what are the facts. I get a lot of people that will often come to me and say, well, Bernadette, we hear about this, and there's tons of articles about how women are valuable in our organization. I'm not finding a lot of specifics around it. Well, you're going to hear, and I'm going to reference multiple studies across the gamut that really have proven the return on investment and the impact of women on your teams, in your organizations. And this isn't just looking at, there's a lot of conversations about women as CEOs and women on the boards, and that's very important. But I came across, and we really won't look at it here, so I'll mention it, but I did come across this research paper, and it basically said the struggle at the board and the CEO level is the fact that we are missing it at the middle management to C-suite level. So if the pool is very small to choose from for those big CEO board jobs, then what we need to do as leaders is find those strategies, tactics, and tools to really advance and develop and grow the women that are down in the other levels of the organization. So the facts are this. This is one study, and there'll be a number of pieces of data from DDI. And again, you can reference the bottom left-hand corner, or you'll have all these links at the end of the presentation. But DDI looked at, and they've done this study for multiple years, and they looked at the impact of women in leadership roles. Now, this isn't necessarily boards. This is leadership roles as well as high potential women that have been identified within organizations. And they found a significant difference in the return on investment or the overall financial performance of an organization when there is a higher level or a higher percentage of women on teams, assigned leadership roles, or even as CEOs. And as you can see from the left to the right, that it's not just a few point difference, it's almost double. High potentials, there's slight less than double, but if you look at 90% of all leaders are women in the bottom 20%, whereas 30% of all leaders are in organizations that have over 30% of women in leadership positions are in the top 20% on financial performance. That's quite a significant difference. And what I want everyone to think about as we're having this conversation is, how would that impact your bottom line? How would that change that one adjustment that you would make, leveraging that one pool of talent? Would that make to whatever role or responsibility that you have within your organization? And we'll talk about the whys in a minute. But keep that in mind, is if one of your goals, because a lot of you in your early feedback when you registered had said, what are the top 3 things I could be doing? Well, start thinking about what would you do, or what ideas do you have? And I'll provide my own ideas. But to even go from that bottom 20%, say you are 19% of your women are leaders, but what could you even be doing if you went from that bottom 20% to those percentages that are closer to the top 20% in financial performance? That could be make up a significant difference within your organization. Now, DDI is not, it wasn't a small study. They looked at 13,000 leaders. They looked at 1,500 plus human resource executives. And then of all of that, there was about 2,000 participating organizations. And what they found was that there's this threshold at 30% that anything, if you can get your pool of talent to be 30% of women, or working your way toward that companies see significant difference in a number of key metrics that they track. And one of those that they look at is that overall financial performance. They were looking at return on equity, return on sales, bottom line profitability. And if going in more into those studies, you'll be able to extract tons of information that you'd be able to leverage within your own organization regarding your business case or your strategy for how you can engage this very strategic return on investment generator, as I call women, return on investment generators, because they are finding that you would have 12 times more likely to be in that top 20% hitting on all those financial performance metrics, which vary from study to study. So you'll notice throughout the presentation, there's 3 or 4 studies I use. Some look at financial performance as all the return on investment, return on equity, return on sales. Others looked at bottom line profitability, levels of productivity, retention. And so across the board, however, they were able to see that there's a significant difference if you're working your way to that 30% line in overall financial performance. Now, the one area that they also looked at, which I thought was interesting in 2 studies, and I'm going to provide you a view. We won't go into deep detail on both, but provide you a view when it comes to what is the penetration or what is the leverage of women within certain industries. And the industries are pretty consistent between the two studies, both from DDI and Credit Suisse. So if you look here, and if these industries, obviously your company is going to be in one of these industries, you may or may not be surprised by them. But you see healthcare, retail, business services, financial services, predominantly where if asked as a woman where they're most leveraged or what industry are they most leveraged, that's pretty consistent. That's pretty average, not normal or average. It's pretty normal that those would be the industries that are focused and even attract women into those organizations at high potential to leadership type of roles. And yet at the same time, you can look below the line and see that very male-dominating companies or industries kind of are in that smaller leverage, in that bottom 20%. No one probably is surprised by that, but being a consultant and being a coach and a advisor in this area, those are the industries that might just want to take a second look to see how they can leverage attracting, retaining, and developing and advancing the women in their organizations based on the fact that when women are brought to the table, so to speak, or included on a team, that the productivity and the return on investment increases. And if you're not near that 30% and you're not getting that 12 times more improvement on the financial performance of the organization, just think if you went from where you are today to 5% improvement and then 7% improvement or 10% improvement, what that could mean to the bottom line of your organization. Now, in another study, this is from the Diversity Inc. I'm sorry, this is from the Diversity Inc. Top 50 companies. They too kind of showed, and I wish I could use my cursor. I'm not sure if you can see it. They too have found that 30% threshold is where companies really see an uptick in their financial performance. So if you look at where companies are today, and they're all falling under that 20%, all of them in this particular study. So the ones that appear to be closer to that 30% in the DDI study, Diversity Inc. found that they're still working their way toward those numbers, but at the same time, there is a great opportunity. I don't like to look at things like, oh, companies aren't doing, the best that they could be doing. I look at it as this is opportunity for any of you within these organizations, within these industries, to really just realize that even if you took your women executives, which is noted here, let's say between 16 and 18% are women executives in the financial healthcare telecommunications arena, if you took that to 22%, if you took that to 25%, what would that mean to your return on equity, your return on sales, your bottom line profitability, to your stakeholders, to all of the people looking at you for profitability and value and equity in your organization? It could be quite profound, making just a few tweaks within your organization, and that being, are you really recognizing and paying attention to the talent and the benefits that women bring into your team and organization? Now, to kind of package it all up, and again, there's tons of data that we could be looking at as far as the return on investment, but I do want to walk through some specifics for you. So overall, the reason why the data matters, it's really simple. More diversity leads to more creative products and teams, which lead to better businesses. Now, that's not my quote, that's Jean Hultquist's quote, and she feels, and she's a leading advisor within the Fortune 500 arena, so to speak. But she feels that with more diverse team chemistry, you get more perspectives with a larger variety of options to consider. So if people are asking why women change and significantly impact the return on investment or the overall value of an organization, it's not because they're smarter, or it's not because they kind of possess what men don't possess. It's more so just the combination of talent, a more diverse team chemistry. You get more perspectives with a larger variety of options to consider, and more chances of having innovative solutions that are proposed in your organization and in your teams, that women can't be ignored in regards to the value that they bring to organizations. And tactically, what I have leaders, both male and female, think about is, if women are the larger percentage, the greater percentage of primary buyers and primary kind of the money people within households, it wouldn't matter if you're a B2B organization or you're a B2C organization. What we as leaders need to be thinking about is, do we understand? Are we comfortable, and do we know the value proposition of how women want to be interacted with as consumers, as our customers, say you're B2B, as our suppliers and our vendors, and then as our employees and our teammates? Do we really understand how to provide them the support, but more so, do we really understand what it is that they want, how they want to be sold to, how they want to be engaged and collaborated and communicated to? Because that has everything to do, from sales to marketing to hiring, developing, and advancing women within our teams. So, but let me get you into some of the specifics. So 500 companies that rank in the top quartile for women representations on their boards outperform the bottom by more than 53%. Now, again, I had mentioned that the board isn't really, for me, is not where I want you to really be thinking hard about. But just think, if in a board they can have that significant impact and change as a result of women being represented there. And again, going back to the fact that they bring diversity, they bring new ideas, they bring innovation. Think of what would happen if that anywhere near that percentage was brought into your organization from bottom to top. But let's look at from like middle management to your leadership team. The other part, the Credit Suisse Gender 3000 report basically found that, adjusting for any industry biases, companies with more than 15%, so here's a more conservative, maybe more achievable number than the 30%, but companies with more than 15% of women in top management carry a 2013 return on equity of 14.7% compared to 9.7%. So that's a significant difference if you look at even just taking it to the 15%. And again, going back to why, they bring innovation, they bring a diverse conversation, problem solving, they have different ideas and innovations, so forth and so on. But let me break down kind of the main numbers I have here. This is according to the Anita Berg Institute for Women in Technology. Now, they have found that, and I think this is key for anyone that's on this call, because we all need to be concerned about that. If we do have talented individuals, male or female, we want to retain them. We want to make sure that they're getting what they need in order to be retained. So they found that companies with more diversity in their staff have a 22% lower turnover rate. So 22% lower turnover rate. And again, that goes back to the findings of, and you probably even experience it yourselves, where you have a diverse team. Let's picture, a group of people sitting around a table having a conversation, and you're going to have a lot more diversity and a lot more, going to have a different conversation. You're going to have a different strategy session. You're going to have a different questions and challenges being brought to the table as a result of having that diverse team, including those women that you can bring to the table. So when Fortune 500 companies had at least 3 female directors, several key factors increased. The return on sales went up 42%, and return on equity increased by 53%. Now I lost my, and my invested capital, which I found very interesting, jumped over 66% as a result of having a more diverse, and in this case, blending women into the organization, into a team, into your leadership structure. I think those could be quite significant when we want to look at, now this information that I'm sharing with you is US based, so I apologize if there's anyone out there in any other country. There is a lot of data in these studies for countries all around the world, and even segments and areas within those countries. And so you'll find that when I provide you all the resources at the end of this, and when you receive it from Brant, there's a lot of great information even from other countries. So those US-based companies that have sectors around the world, you'll be able to leverage this information for yourselves as well. So the why. I thought this was interesting as to the why, and that was noted in the Credit Suisse Gender 3000 report. You and I can sit back and kind of determine our own ideas of why this is happening, or why women contribute so significantly. But I thought it was fascinating what Professor Anita Woodley at Carnegie Mellon's Tepper School of Business shows, that it's not the greatest ability that leads to the best answers or outcome. Within a group working together, the presence of a woman within the group is one of the key factors that influences the group's collective intelligence, or in other words, the ability of the group to make successful decisions. Skill sets are different. One is not necessarily better than the other, but enabling seems as important as being able. So enabling seems as important as being able. So again, this isn't the question of whether women are smarter or women are better or at something than men, just as it isn't about men are better or different than women. This is more so, as leaders, there is a return on investment generator within our organizations that we may or may not be leveraging the way that we should be in order to really kind of grow everyone within the organization. So I wanted to really spend some time on that data, but let me get to some of the perceptions, both from a woman, man, and then what companies can do, and what are those top 3 things, because many of you asked about that in your registration questions, that you could be doing today in order to take advantage of all this great data. So women, I'm not going to spend a great deal of time here, but there's a great article out there, The Confidence Gap for Men and Women, for leaders as a whole, that I think it's important for us to be upfront and really be real about what goes on out there. As much as I'd like to think, well, I was one as a leader who always asked, I always took risks, so forth and so on, that's not the majority. And so women as a whole that are on this call, don't take this that I'm speaking to you, but just recognize, and men too, recognize that this is what is happening amongst the pool of female talent that you have. They're not asking, and they need to know that they can ask. They need to know that they are capable now, and they have everything that they need to take on new assignments and to get those promotions and advancements. They don't need to be 100% ready. And that's what many women, and I'm one of 12 children, and I have 5 sisters, 6 brothers, and I will tell you that of my 5 sisters and myself, they would say about me that I don't worry about any of these things, but yet they would acknowledge for themselves that they certainly do wait until they're 100% ready versus, I believe in the 80-20 rule, and they do doubt themselves and they do question themselves before they take a risk, and that is what is really holding women back. This study, it was part of the DDI global forecast, really showed where women will rate themselves. Now women, think about it. You know, when was the last time you really kind of walked around and kind of beat your chest in a good way to say, you know, I am ready and I am capable, and I might not have 100% of what I need for that advancement or for that project or that task that you want me to do, but I'm willing to take it on. And it becomes very apparent when we look at both men and women that men have no issue with stepping up when they're only, you know, part ready. They have no issue in taking on big assignments, even internationally, uprooting themselves. And women, we are more than capable. You are more than capable, and the women in your organizations are more than capable and ready. And we need to tap in as leaders and managers, male or female, at any level of the organization. If the women aren't stepping up, we need to challenge them. And women, if you know you are ready and maybe not being heard, then you need to raise your voice a little louder. But there's too many things that show that both from a personal and professional development perspective, women, you're there and you're ready and you're capable, and it's just a matter of you believing in that and moving it forward. But that's a whole other conversation that we could have at a different time. Oops, why am I going backwards? So real quickly, I want to show that here there was one reason that really jumped out at me as to why that was happening, and that is the fact that majority of the women out in the organizations that are in management positions, they're in what they call shared services type of functions, HR, IT, legal, external affairs. They're not in the things to the right that really are going to be able to propel them forward. So I'm going to jump to this, and then I'll go back if we have some time. But women, you need to be more strategic in your personal and professional development and really take on the assignments both internally, and what I mean by that is in the corporate headquarters, but also be asked for field assignments. Go and look for operational jobs, sales jobs, marketing jobs, jobs that will expand your expertise and your value to the organization and your experience in the field as well as back in the corporate office, because that is what the leadership team looks for in, you know, advancing individuals, male or female, through the chain. And you'll see some other things here. I'm gonna mention mentoring and sponsoring. You need to look for mentors and sponsorships, but at the same time, giving back and serving other individuals, whether it's peers or teammates, or even if it's someone senior to you that is looking for some mentoring, for instance. I've done that in the past myself, just because I had certain skill sets that individual, even though they were senior to me, did not. So women just need to step out and be very strategic in what it is that they're doing. Now, men, just a few things for you. You can look at this in the studies that I'm providing you, but the reasons that, I'll call them excuses, that men often have, or the perception men often have, is that women aren't asking and women aren't stepping up and women are leaving the organization because of family or children. And really, and that's not the case. There's been too many studies that show, yes, there is an issue with women asking. We just talked about that. At the same time, we want to really be realistic about the fact that women have the same reasons for leaving a job or being unhappy or leaving even kind of a division within an organization that men do. So take a look at that. And this study was very interesting in looking at kind of the reasons both men and women may find that they're not happy and or they're leaving their organizations. One other thing is about unconscious bias. And I threw this in the male section, yet women need to be aware of it too. If you're not familiar with the term unconscious bias, you're going to want to become it. Just think about it. We all have them. We all have our own belief systems, and we all make judgments, whether we're aware of them consciously or not, in regards to something. And we make, those preconceived decisions based on that. And what we really want to be sure that we're doing is we're really not allowing our own biases to judge and muddy the water, that we're really being open and I don't want to use the word honest, but that's kind of what it's about. And I tend to be very frank and blunt about things. But that is really what we all want to pay attention to, is are we judging and hiring and making decisions fairly for not only for women, but for ourselves and for the best interest of our teams and our organizations. So I just want to leave you with this from a man's perspective, is what would happen if you just adjusted this structure? And, it could be anybody's structure, but what if you adjusted this team structure even by 10%? What would that do to your bottom line? So what can you do? Take the lead. Take the lead in wanting to understand more about what women's value is to your organization. Ask and learn. Evaluate. Expand your circle. And what I mean by that is oftentimes we hire the people that look and are a lot like ourselves. So expand your circle and really get familiar with all kinds of talent, especially the women, and learn and start leveraging them, so then it's benefiting you, your company, and the women as a whole. Now I'm going to go through these very quickly. These are just some kind of viewpoints of how companies are now looking at things. They're looking at the cultural in the workplace and the unconscious bias, and they're looking at really what do women need in order to get that advancement, and what do they need to be providing women in order to do so. So you'll see exposure is quite significant there, because they found that if you look at the bottom part of this, they found that the initiatives that they've had currently in place aren't working. So those initiatives focused on women, those initiatives that are, specifically, focused on diversity, they're not really working. What is working is the mentoring, the sponsorship, and the planning, proactive planning of how to leverage women in their organization. Companies around the world are realizing that there are many things in regards to the benefits that they're realizing within their organizations. And I'm going to make sure when I send you this this material out that you have the studies, because we're running short in time and I apologize for that, but I want to make sure that you do see what their best practices are. So here are some best practices. Many of you asked what are some things that we could be doing. Here, measuring, tracking, and reporting. Put together groups, many of them call them business resource and employee groups. Mentor and sponsor. Goals, set goals that are tied to compensation, and then just hire and advance strategically. Again, going back to the fact that we're all in the business of return on investment and driving the best out of our organizations and out of our teams. That's our job as leaders. And therefore, plan proactively and look at things more strategically from the beginning as opposed to at the end. And I'll just mention that I offered Brant, although Brant, you might talk to this, but I'd offered him an opportunity that if you're having challenges, many of you put that you're not quite there where it comes to leveraging the women in your organization. I would love to go into a lot more detail, because as you can tell, there's a lot that we could be discussing around this subject. So please take advantage of that. I'd love to be able to lend you a lot more details and ideas of how you can leverage it. And then here's your resources. And again, you're going to be getting all this material from Brant. And so I'll look forward to you taking advantage of it and leveraging it within your organization as to how you can take advantage of this ROI generator that's currently within your organization. Thanks, everyone.
That's great, Bernadette. Great, terrific. Thank you. Well, one word, and it's come up in the chat box. People have come back and just said, wow. I mean, there is just an incredible amount of wonderful data here. I was so impressed with that 30% number, right? I mean, that seems to be kind of the magical number, right, Bernadette, in terms of what companies need to achieve?
It is. It seems to be that point where that's where you're not going to get maximum, because it doesn't mean that it can't be 40 or 50, but that's an optimal place to set your goal to. You don't have to do it right away, but set your goal to.
Excellent, terrific. Well, listen, we've got a lot of questions, and there's some coming into the chat box. Please, once again, everybody, get your questions in. I'm going to cite a few from some of the surveys that many of you completed when you signed up for the webinar, so let's get into that. But first, I want to start with the survey questions. I know, Bernadette, you've seen this, but to share it with everyone, the first question we asked was, which areas of focus are top of mind in leveraging women leaders? And the highest percentage was strategies, initiatives, and programs that work. That was 69%, and people chose multiple answers, so this won't add up to 100. The second level was financial impact to the bottom line, 46%, and the top three things to do first was 42%. So by and large, that strategies, initiatives, and programs that work was the highest rated. The second survey question was, does your company currently measure the effectiveness and productivity of women leaders? And this was interesting. 69% said no, we don't have formal programs, which, you know, makes you curious a little bit, because how can you really understand and monitor if, you know, your diversity, whether that's, you know, gender or race or anything else, is working if you're not indeed measuring it. 23%.
Well, I want to comment there, Brant, just real quickly, because I thought it was interesting. Is that one of them had mentioned that they have been consciously agnostic in their approach, and therefore it's not about having programs specific to it. They just chose to be kind of consciously agnostic, and they were asking, is that a good approach? Because it seems to be working. Right. And all I can say is, if it's working, don't break it.
Well, yeah, I think Horst asked that question.
Strategic thought process in it too.
And I want to come to that in a minute, because I think there's some interesting nuggets there to mine a little bit further. The last question was, does your company see advancing women as a strategic imperative for your company? And 54% said yes. So that was very encouraging. But a third, 31%, said not sure. So, you know, there's a significant number of companies out there, at least based on our small sample, where, you know, people aren't, you know, don't know whether it's going on or not. And 15% said no. But let's go to the survey questions. We've got a few more questions coming in. Please, once again, everyone, put your questions in the chat box. But let me pull from a few questions that came in beforehand, Bernadette. Would love to get your opine on these in our time remaining. This was from Horst, who runs a business out of Boston and Berlin with a large staff of people in the Philippines. And it said, interestingly, diversity just happened to us. We focused on skills and results, didn't take gender or other social status into account at all, more like consciously ignoring it because we didn't feel that, you know, was that relevant. By consciously being agnostic to diversity, we ended up being diverse. You know, is that a valid strategy, or was that a random outcome?
Yeah, I love that comment, and because, again, you know, if it's not broken, don't, you know, if it's not broken, don't go and try to fix it. At the same time, I do believe that there has to be some foresight in not only this subject about women in a business, but whatever return on investment generators you have within your organization. To fully optimize them appropriately, you're going to want to have some strategic thought process and plan that you want to put in place in order to do that. But good for you, you know.
Yeah, no, it's great. And I would ask Horst, it would be interesting for you to come back to us. Go and do your survey now. I would suspect that you have greater than 30%. Yeah. And, you know, it would be really cool if you could let us know Horst, whether at your top leadership as well as throughout the organization, what your percentage is. The next question comes from Amy. Amy says, how many women leaders can best support, how can women leaders best support and mentor other leaders, women and men?
They just need to do it. I mean, it sounds so simple and kind of silly, but women can really optimize and leverage their own skill set and their own expertise by reaching out proactively. Even if other women and men have a tendency to not be sure what mentoring is or not be sure what the value of it is, then initiate. And if you see a high potential or someone that deserves that mentoring or would benefit that individual, then even offer that up. But certainly don't be afraid to ask for your own mentoring and sponsorship, as well as mentor and sponsor other people, male or female. Like I said earlier, even seniors, if you have a skill set that they don't have, you'd be amazed at what value you might serve to them, and therefore they might even become your sponsor.
Right, right. Now that's very valid. I work with a consultant called Andrew Sobel out of New York, and one of the things that he says is, when asked how the best way is to access CEOs, is to say, don't start with their CEOs, right? When you see someone who has aspiring opportunities within your company or outside, whether they're 10, 15, 20 years younger than you, that's when you begin to start the relationship. And whether it's a coach or it's a mentor or it's just a friendly relationship, just take that step and break out, and you never know where that relationship may go. So this is a question, the next one here, and I'm just conscious of our time, want to wrap up in a few minutes here. This is Lorraine. Lorraine joining us from the Netherlands, and she works in the telecoms area. In fact, Lorraine and I worked together, about 10 or 15 years ago. And she says, as a woman in a man's world, what can I do to improve? She deals with selling, telecom equipment infrastructure, which is very much a man's world.
Yeah. Oh, I saw that question, and it can be quite significant of a response in this conversation. However, I come from that world too. I come from a technology data warehousing background where I was pretty much the only woman in the room. One is don't think about it too much. I think we worry about the fact that we're always the only woman in the room. Engage the men, engage the teammates, understand kind of how to collaborate and engage and get the best out of them, which will then get the best out of you. And just don't be afraid. Don't not speak up. Don't not take on initiatives. Don't not take risks just because you might be surrounded by men all the time. Yes, will they have perceptions that maybe you're being pushy or you're being too overt or, whatever bully, whatever other B words people may use. You just have to ignore that. If you're going about your role and your position in the best high value way you can, serving the team that you're part of, then you're going to get the recognition and the advancement that you're looking for.
Excellent. Great. Bonnie asked a question which I think you addressed, but I think it's important because her follow-up question is interesting here too. She says, what seems to be the best balance of men and women ratio in the workplace? And I think you addressed that. 30% is kind of the litmus test. I don't know if it's diminishing returns after that time, whether there's any statistics to that, but obviously 30% is the minimum. But she asked a follow-up question is, does it matter what function? So maybe if you have any insights on that, Bernadette.
Yeah, very quickly is like that one slide was showing, and I apologize. I noticed that there was a comment about it, something being fuzzy. It's more in the advantage of the woman, the benefit of the woman to get experience across the business. Meaning that, as that one slide showed, most women are assigned in the shared services arena. So that's HR, that's legal, that's IT, that's finance. And yet, to get advanced, you need more field operations, sales, and marketing experience. So there isn't really the best niche, but from a skill set or talent perspective that a woman fits, I think women can do just about anything. And they can do anything. But women aren't going into those other areas of the organization, and that's what is preventing them from getting the advancement. So develop your plans to kind of get yourself moved around within the organization.
Right. Makes good sense. Jim asks, where is the best place to look for up-and-coming women to lead organizations?
Within your organization would be the first place I would go, and only because a lot of people don't. They just assume, well, they're here, they would be asking. Don't make that assumption. Should the women be asking? Absolutely, but don't just kind of brush them off. And then I would look in your industry as a whole. As leaders, we're all well networked. So reach out and inquire on who you're hearing or you're seeing writing papers. LinkedIn has helped tremendously to give visibility to corporate and entrepreneurial leaders, women and men. And then ask peers, even ask peers outside your organization, like what women talent is out there. I had a CEO challenge me that women aren't asking. They're not stepping up for the big roles. I happen to be going to and speaking to a large room of financial insurance industry, and I said, well, let me find that out for you. I'll ask them, and of course when I asked them, they all went, oh my gosh, no, I'd be asking for that position. So you need to ask, because I think, again, that unbiased unconscious bias, I think, feeds perceptions, and therefore look in a variety of places inside and outside your company.
Great, makes good sense. Horst came back, by the way, with his stats, very, very interesting. Of the 7 officers in his company, 4 are women. At the director level, 40% are women.
Nice.
So thank you, Horst, for supporting the statistics here. We got time for a couple of other questions, and then we'll sign off. This is from Roberto, again, one of our international visitors from Brazil. And this is a very interesting one. He says, why do you think the women potential is so high compared with men? In Brazil, we had a very bad experience with a woman leading the country that's recently been impeached. So.
Oh, okay. Not one woman speaks for all women. and I just think that the reason why women have so much potential is because their potential hasn't been leveraged and utilized as much. I don't think again, I mentioned it. It's not that it's better than men's. I just think we haven't leveraged the talent that they already have, and therefore mix it up and allow your women to contribute and add that value, because you can't deny the data and you can't deny the facts.
We had a comment from one of our participants that said that had nothing to do with women. It had everything to do with Brazil. So last question, and then we'll let it go. We've got a couple more coming in the chat box. Arlene asks, have you read the book Knowing Your Value by Mike Brzezinski? And if so, do you believe the book offers valuable insight? Is that a book you've heard of?
Yes. As a matter of fact, I was working to get her on my radio show because just from the fact that not only her story, but all the other stories of the executives within the book. I won't say that I've read the book front to back, but I'm very familiar with it, and I have read excerpts from it. I do have it sitting in my office. And I think any information and viewpoints, even varying viewpoints that you may agree or disagree, are always good to have when it comes to trying to figure out an initiative or a business imperative that you may not be fully educated or informed on. So it can't hurt, and then you just make a judgment from what you read.
Terrific. Well, listen, that's great. Once again, I want to thank you, Bernadette, for the time that you've invested. Bernadette, I've put our offer up on the screen, and why don't you do the same with regards to your full complimentary consulting offer if you want to go back to screen share and pull that up. As all of you know that have attended this in the past, we offer to anyone who's attended an opportunity to have free assessments for yourself and a couple of management folks within your team. All you need to do is click there on the tab there on your screen, and you'll be able to sign up, give us your information, and we'll get back to you. It's a great way to get a handle on how folks are, basically doing in your organization, how they may fit with you and others, and we offer that to all of our attendees. Bernadette also has one free complimentary hour. Were you able to get that back up on screen?
I'm looking, and for whatever reason, I can't get the share screen thing up.
No worries. We'll make sure that goes out, and we'll put that in the follow-up message to everyone, Bernadette. In fact, all of you that have attended, as well as those that registered and may be looking at this later, you do qualify, obviously, for that complimentary hour, and that information will be in the replay that's going out sometime tomorrow.
Thank you.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Once again, Bernadette, can't thank you enough. Really